Order. Order. Sean Davis to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. I beg to move that this House has considered paternity leave and pay in the UK. Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. My first Westminster Hall debate being chaired by my neighbouring Member of Parliament. It's a delight to be here. I know families come in all shapes and sizes, and paternity leave isn't just about fathers. But I will primarily refer to dads in my speech, but the points that I'm making relate to and apply to all families of all shapes and sizes. I stand here as a dad, a parent, an MP who believes that parenthood matters to children, to families, to employers, and to the economy and to our country. The UK currently has the worst paternity pay and leave in Europe and among the worst in the OECD. Fathers, if they are eligible, and around 20% of them are not, can take a maximum of 2 weeks paid leave at a maximum rate of £184 a week, less than half the national living wage. In 2023, 605,000 babies were born in the UK, yet only 195,000 dads received statutory paternity pay. That's less than one father for every 3 children. Contrast that with 52 weeks of maternity leave, with 39 weeks of maternity pay, and it's clear that our system needs to be updated for the 21st century. As a father myself, I do have a vested interest in this issue, but better paternity rights aren't just good for fathers, they are good for mums, and more importantly, they are better and good for children. I was able to speak to a number of parents at an event in Parliament with the Dad Shift campaign last week, and I heard from several dads the difference paternity leave, or the lack of it, has made to their relationships with their young children. I want to live in a society where children can see both parents as caregivers, but for that to happen, it needs to be possible for both parents to be present during those vital early years. Evidence shows that the physical and social bonds that are set so early are critical for babies as they grow up, and to fathers, the father's connection to the children in later life. I heard from one dad, Simon, at the event in Parliament, who suffered from undiagnosed depression after the birth of his child. That was made worse because there wasn't the time that he had with his child, that bond to develop and to establish. This isn't the 1950s. We can all agree that the most men do want to have relationships with their children, especially during the early years, but the law does not reflect that. Another dad I spoke to, George, had a generous employer who gave him more than the statutory pay and leave, and he spoke glowingly about the difference that made, both to his own mental health and well-being, but also, of course, the balance in the household and the relationship with his child. It was great to hear that there's a number of employers going above and beyond the statutory minimum. But as of 2022, 49% of employers covered the minimum statutory paternity leave, and this simply is too important, I would suggest, to leave at the whim of individual employers. And change needs to start within government and the public sector. I recently tabled a number of written questions to government departments asking how much paternity leave their staff took on average. The only department whose staff took more than the 14 days was the Department for Education, whereas other departments such as Transport at 9.6 days, the DWP 7.25 days, and the Cabinet Office were ranking the worst with 5.7 days. The government and the public sector should be exemplary employers, but they are instead lagging behind some other private sector employers. And we need this first step, a signal from the government and from the public sector as a whole, that this is something that needs to be improved. As at the Dad Shift event, I heard from mums and dads about the toll the segregated system had taken on their own careers. Making it easier for dads to look after the kids also makes it easier for mums to continue in their workplace, a point that my honourable friend from Walthamstow has made so passionately in the Chamber only this week. It is morally wrong to pressure women into sacrificing their career for their family, but it's also a massive productivity drain as well. This government wants to restore growth, create jobs and create wealth. The Centre of Progressive Policy estimates that closing the gender employment gap in all UK local authorities could increase economic output by a staggering £23 billion. And the OECD estimates that 3/4 of the gender wage gap in Northern and Western Europe is down to the motherhood penalty. How many talented women are we losing from the workforce because they can't get back into work after lengthy maternity leave? How much better off could we be if both parents could take leave short enough not to harm their own careers, but long enough to support their children? And technically, that is already an option with the changes that took place in 2015 with shared paternity rights. However, the government's own analysis found that only 1% of eligible mothers and 5% of eligible fathers took shared parental leave. And I heard from one father, Alex, who told me that the system and the process was so complicated that he paid a third party £50 to complete the forms because it was so complicated to navigate. Things are about to get better. I'm delighted that the government has had the second reading of the Employment Rights Bill only this week, and that will mark a massive step forward on paternity leave and pay, expanding eligibility by introducing day one rights to paternity and parental leave, allowing fathers to take paternity leave after they've taken shared parental leave, and a full review of all parental leave rights. It's clear that the government recognises that this is an issue and that further steps need to be taken. I will on that point.
I thank my honourable friend from Telford for giving way. He's making an excellent speech on an issue that is clearly of importance to so many of us. But would he accept and agree that 2 weeks paternity pay, even if the birth of your child has been straightforward and simple, passes very quickly? If there is a complication in the birth, if there is an illness for the mother, if the child has complications, actually that 2 weeks disappears in a blink of an eye, and then parents and fathers go back to work, and actually fathers feel guilty about not being able to be home to support at a time of need.
I think the honourable friend from Stoke-on-Trent makes a very powerful contribution. My own brother was born 3 months premature, and that ability for my own father to be there was curtailed by the fact that the paternity leave just simply wasn't generous enough. The Employment Rights Bill, which I welcome, goes some way towards addressing the eligibility problem, but there's more that we can do. Research by the Centre of Progressive Policy, Women in Data and Pregnant and Then Screwed found that countries with longer paternity leave have lower gender wage gaps and lower gender workforce participation gaps than countries like our own. This leave doesn't just need to be longer, it needs to be better paid. In line with statutory maternity pay, 90% of earnings for the first 6 weeks, and it needs to be a use it or lose it and non-transferable to encourage take-up. Fundamentally, the root problem is the assumption that there must always be one primary parent. That will suit some families, but it benefits no one to force that choice upon everyone. The campaign for fair parental leave and pay is a campaign to normalise co-parenting. I'm making a number of asks of the Minister, and I want to just acknowledge his work in regards to the updating of the employment rights across the country. And I think he should be congratulated for that work. But I do think that we are able to go further. And I do believe that we must not let the good be the enemy of the great. We must applaud the progress that's being made, affirm that we could go further, and ask his department to review the rights around parental leave so that we can have that contribution and that conversation. This is our generation of MPs' moment to drag working practices into the 21st century for the benefits of dads, mums, society and our country, but most of all for our children growing up. Let's give British children their dads back. Let's be pro-growth, pro-worker, pro-business, pro-children and importantly, pro-family.
The question is that this House has considered paternity leave and pay. Freddie Van Mierlo.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I'd also like to recognise, as the Honourable Member for Telford has, my experience of fatherhood is heteronormative and appreciate that there are many other forms of families. I'll probably end up, repeating some of the very excellent points put forward by the member for Telford, but since they're very good points, I will not hesitate to repeat them. The first point I'd like to make is that paternity as it currently is set up is a classist system with white-collar workers generally getting much better provision from their employers, for which we're all very grateful. well, those workers that get it. My experience, some workers getting up to 6 months if they're in particularly demand industries, with contrast that with the provision from workers in precarious industries, the gig economy, or traditional blue-collar workers tending to get very little indeed, naught if they're self-employed, or 2 weeks of the statutory pay. I'd like to also make a point around the fact that paternity leave is so essential to avoiding the woman becoming the default primary caregiver, and that inequality in terms of length given entrenches further inequalities. In terms of maternal health as well, I'd also like to highlight that the current length of period of paternity pay, 2 weeks, is extremely challenging if your partner or birthing partner has experienced a traumatic birth, whether that's a C-section or otherwise. My wife went through a 40-hour labour and also a really difficult pregnancy with hyperemesis, and that had particularly impacts on her physical health, but also on her mental health, and many other women experience the same, and the support of the partner is essential at that time. And as so many people as well move around the country these days finding work, many people also live quite far away from their families, and so having the father or the partner there is essential as well. In terms of also workplace and the point touched on in terms of gender pay gap, there are evidence from other countries is clear here as well. The longer the paternity pay, the better we are at closing gender pay gaps, and the less impact it has actually on the person giving birth and their career prospects. I'd like to just end with a slight riposte of the previous government for their shameful response to a petition that was put on this topic in the last Parliament, which denied that the government would extend paternity leave, but simply exalted the benefits of being able to split the 2 weeks into different chunks of time. Well, how generous that is and how useful that is cannot be, I suppose, underestimated. Obviously being facetious there. The employment bill very clearly doesn't go far enough, but I welcome this debate and the noises from those on the government benches that they will consider this issue in the future.
Before I call Alistair Strathern, can I just say, because of the interest in this debate, I'm afraid I'll have to impose a time limit of 2 minutes. That could be adjusted later. Mr. Strathern.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. And I want to thank my honourable friend, the member for Telford, for securing such an important debate on this issue. For many, parenthood will be one of the most exciting journeys they go on in their life, and one of the most rewarding too. But speak to any parent and you'll be under no illusions that it's also bloody hard work. And for too many across society at the moment, it's also work that's split in a equally unequal and often very gendered way. And we shouldn't shy away from acknowledging the very gendered way the cost of that imbalance is currently doled out across society. We should also acknowledge, I think, that it's all of us, every child, every parent, every family, every member of society, who is losing out as a result of that persisting. Now, of course, in some cases, biological realities will drive some imbalances that are inevitable. As my partner Megan regularly points out to me, if we do ever have a child together, it won't be me that's likely doing the bulk of the having. But there are others that are entirely in our gift. And this debate today is, I think, highlighting a really important one of those. That is paternity pay. I've spoken to far too many families, far too many fathers and co-parents across my constituency who've had to make really heartbreaking choices over the last few years as a result of the current inequity in parental pay and parental leave. Fathers who have to make the difficult choice about whether they squander savings they can barely afford to stick around for those crucial early months of their child's upbringing. Parents who've had to make the difficult choice of taking unpaid leave that sometimes can be deeply contested with their employer, or depriving a mother of the support they need after a C-section while also going through all of the burdens that early parenthood brings. These aren't choices, Mr. Pritchard, that anyone should be having to make, and these are choices we must put right. I really welcome the government's action already on some of these issues, bringing forward day one rights to paternity leave and pay, but it's clear we need to do more, and I'm looking forward to working with colleagues right across this House and right across this room today, and the Minister, to make sure over the course of this government we can deliver that change too. Thank you.
James McCleary.
As a father with 2 young children, I can say that their first months were a time would not have missed for anything in the whole world. I am proud to be recently appointed chair of the APPG in early education and childcare, so I have a big interest in this area, and it's something that I'm really keen to work with all parties on going forwards. I would really like to thank the Honourable Member for bringing this forward. It's such an important issue, and I hope that the lack of turnout from the opposition side is not a reflection of their own lack of interest in the subject, which I think it would be fair to say is a very interesting one. Speaking to other parents on the school gates and elsewhere, I'm often told of the difficulties parents have had accessing paternity leave and therefore sharing parenting equally. With nursery costs spiralling and a wider cost of living crisis, it is time for better paternity pay, to have it increased to 90% of fathers' salaries as soon as we possibly can, to make it something that actually creates options for fathers and for parents as a whole. Development in early years is irreplaceable for children. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but in this country we don't even seem to support 2 people raising one. Let's increase paternity pay, introduce a dad's month, widen eligibility for paternity pay. I hope that this government is going to work cross-party, and I think you've already outlined that you will, to take cross-party action, to take action on this critical equality and...
Does the gentleman give way on that point particularly?
Yes, go for it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take the opportunity just to ask my honourable friend if he agrees that particularly about the eligibility for paternity pay and the omission of the self-employed for eligibility at the moment. And does he agree that that rules out such a large number of our colleagues, our residents and our constituents, and that's a really major issue that needs to be addressed, and hopefully we can encourage the government to come forward with schemes to fill in that gap.
I thank my honourable friend for raising that point, and it's an absolutely critical one, particularly for the self-employed, who often find themselves excluded. A lot of parents I know, including very good friends of mine, run their own businesses and so forth, and have found it very, very hard to access paternity pay. So just to finish, this is a critical equality and fairness issue. I'm really pleased that we're talking about it today, because it's something personally very important to me, and I'll be very happy to work collaboratively with people from across the House to improve paternity pay going forward. Thank you.
Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Chair. So I have spent the last 13 years advising particularly women in the employment tribunals, and I have advised a lot of women who have suffered from maternity discrimination. It was an absolute mainstay of my practice. My comments are going to be completely heteronormative. That is not to disparage any other family structures. During the pandemic, for the first time, large numbers of women and men were able to work from home. And the reason I raise this is that prior to the pandemic, I spent a lot of time advising women on flexible working requests where they asked to work from home for 1 or perhaps 2 days a week. And that was absolutely habitually turned down as completely impossible. Employers would not hear of it. Once men did it, it was absolutely acceptable. And it is now absolutely fine in most organisations for parents of either gender to work from home for 1 or 2 days a week. If we continue to have a situation in which women take the overwhelming majority of maternity leave, we will continue to have a situation in which women continue to take the entire career burden and are systematically discriminated against for it. And 54,000 women a year are losing their jobs when they are pregnant or on maternity leave. This is a very widespread issue. I will.
I think we also have to think about all the women who aren't having children, but are being discriminated against in any case because employers expect them to. Does she agree with me that one of the things we need to do to get paternity leave right in its own right is to make sure that everyone in their 30s and 40s is equally discriminated against because they might go off and have children?
Yeah. I mean, I completely recognise what she's just said. The risk zone for women in respect of their careers starts when they're approximately 25 and carries on until they're at least 45. And I myself was advised not to wear my wedding ring to interviews because I was likely to be viewed as a pregnancy risk. Until we deal with this, until men take significant amounts of leave, until they are paid properly to do it, we will continue to face this issue, and women will be discriminated against on a systematic basis, as my friend says, whether they have children or not. And approximately 12% of employers disclosed in a YouGov poll that they were reluctant to hire a woman simply on the basis that she might become pregnant. It is a really widespread issue, whether you have children or not. So, yeah, I would say we need non-transferable, use it or lose it, parental leave for the second parent. And we need to ensure that that's paid at a rate that people are actually able to take it. And once we have that, and that becomes the default minimum, and in fact some fathers choose to take significantly longer, then everyone will be a risk, and then everyone will be able to have career development, and this will simply change the entire attitude towards maternity leave for our society. And it's 54,000 women a year losing their jobs when they're pregnant or on maternity leave. And all the women that I advised all thought that individually they just got unlucky. But I can tell you, given the volume of them that I saw, that they were not unlucky. This is systematic. Thank you.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It is an honour to serve under your chairmanship, and may I congratulate the member for Telford for securing this very important debate. It was a pleasure to welcome parents, children and teachers from Europa School in my constituency to Parliament last week, all of whom were campaigning with Dad Shift, which the honourable member has already referenced, calling for paternity leave reform. And Dad Shift is calling for reform that represents giving substantial time to dads that is affordable so that everyone can afford to take it, and that enables both parents to have equality in terms of access to that leave. There is a clear moral and economic case for equal parental leave. In countries that offer at least 6 weeks of paternity leave, the gender pay gap is 4% smaller and the workforce participation gap is reduced by 3.7%. And this shows that supporting parental leave not only strengthens British families but helps to grow the economy. We Liberal Democrats believe that parents should have greater flexibility and choice over how to manage work with parenting in the first months of their child's life. And greater equality in parenting will also lead to greater equality in the workplace, as the honourable member for Walthamstow has just said. Mr Pritchard, with the forthcoming budget, I very much hope that the Minister has sought opportunities to influence proceedings to look for opportunities to improve parental leave. And in the longer term, when the public finances allow, our ambition in the Liberal Democrats is to give all families 6 weeks of use it or lose it leave for each parent, paid as 90% of earnings, and 46 weeks of parental leave to share between themselves as they choose, paid at double the current statutory rate. I look forward to hearing the Minister's comments. Thank you.
Blair McDougall.
Thank you, Chairman. Richard, for allowing me to speak in this debate. I want to talk about the kind of vision of the role of fathers in society that other honourable members have spoken about, and about how it takes personal choice, yes, from fathers, but it also takes cultural change and economic change as well. On that point, on personal choice, I feel that very acutely. My own father chose not to be part of my life from a very young age. I'm very determined that that should not be repeated for my own family's upbringing. And that's not unusual. 9 out of 10 dads, for example, now will go to the neonatal scan. They will go to 9 out of 10 to the birth. Fathers want to be part of their children's lives. They want to be better fathers. But the culture and the economics makes it difficult. The cultural point for me, when I was establishing my own business, I made the choice to be a stay-at-home father for a period of time. And you are excluded from the coffee with the mothers after nursery pickup. You're not part of the mum bus WhatsApp chat. But that culture continues because of the economics behind it as well. We know that the gap between average pay and statutory paternity leave is about £1,000. That's something that parents cannot afford. And we know that there is a class element to this as well, with 9 out of 10 households earning over £60,000 a year able to take their paternity leave, while those under £25,000 a year, it's only about 2/3. So if we want that cultural change and that personal choice to be taken advantage of, we need to deal with the economics of this and create more generous arrangements for paternity pay. And I particularly agree with the suggestion from the member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent Central, that as well as looking at paternity leave, we also have to give people the ability to take crisis leave, because this doesn't end at those first couple of weeks of changing nappies and going to the pharmacy. We need to have that ability as fathers throughout childhood.
Jim Shannon.
Thank the honourable gentleman for Telford for setting the scene so well. He's already making a reputation for himself in this House. Well done, and we look forward to more debates in Westminster Hall. Paternity leave in Northern Ireland allows for 1 to 2 weeks leave to be taken, and statutory paternity pay can be paid if your average weekly earnings are £123. You can also get a wee bit more as well in relation to that. But it's an expensive time for a family and not much support is available. If you were living in Japan, you wouldn't have to worry about it because you have a year's paternity leave. But we're not living in Japan, we're in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, so it's very different. In relation to 2 weeks semi-paid leave, is very little when we look at what a woman goes through in the delivery process. And now that we have increased pension age and more parents are working into their 60s, gone are the days of your mum coming to help with the housework and other jobs in the first month of your child. This simply isn't a choice available to working grandparents, and the pressure on mum is massive. Another 2 weeks of paternity leave can make all the difference, especially when we consider that ladies who have had a difficult birth, infection post-birth or a C-section, as my own wife had, they were unable to do any heavy lifting and need their husband more than ever. So it's all about looking out for the whole family as a whole. I don't think we have it right when a dad has to go on the sick to ensure that his wife, who is 2 weeks out from major surgery, isn't left alone and almost helpless with their new baby, totally dependent. My youngest son and his wife had their last son that they had. She ended up with a bad back after that as a result of the pregnancy. It happens. But the point I'm making is paternity care would have been great for her. We need to offer a lot more support for what can be such a vulnerable time in the life of a family. And I look to the Minister to recognise the lessening wider family support and the need for the little family to navigate this period together without taking sick leave or feeling guilty for not being to work. This is the most precious time of a family's life. We have in our power in this House to do more to take away stress and give the little one the best possible start in life. And I know that's what everyone in this House is committed to. Thank you.
Senator Creasy.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to share under your chairmanship, and also I must congratulate the member for Telford for bringing forward this debate, which is long overdue and one that previously has had a minimal turnout. So it's fantastic to see so many people here. Can I also pay tribute to the Dad Shift and the original campaigners, Pregnant Then Screwed and Jolie Brearley. Jolie Brearley came up with the pancake test. If we consistently put mums and dads in two different boxes and put mums looking after babies and dads having to go back to work after those 2 first weeks when you've just realised that the meconium will eventually stop, then it's mums who understand how to feed the child pancakes and dads who don't. Mums who get why some days they'll have them rolled up, some days they want them flat, and some days they want them with cream. The everyday caring for children that is at the heart of being able to look after them. And slowly but surely it ends up being easier for the mum to take the child and deal with the toddler, and dads get further and further away. That's why today I'm here in the minute I have left to argue for the Minister that we need PAPA. PAPA is paid and protected leave. And we need that for mums and dads in every single relationship, because the risk with the employment bill and the brilliant changes it brings forward is it could actually entrench these challenges rather than helping us resolve them. What do I mean by that? I mean, if we entrench the idea that shared parental leave is the answer to this challenge, we are entrenching one of the biggest crimes against relationships. Because as the data shows us time and time again, it's mums who end up having to look after children and mums who end up having to take that link. And that's why in this country there is a motherhood penalty. There is a motherhood penalty that means that mums are seen as less committed, less capable, less competent, less worthy of promotion. I'll happily give way.
Does my friend agree that the idea that part-timer is a term of abuse is a shocking concept and that this could help with that?
I completely agree. I was also shocked to hear members on the opposite benches, who obviously aren't here today, talking about flexible working as somehow lesser working. When you work flexibly, you don't work less. It's why you end up sending emails in the evening, because you're prioritising your time to do bedtime. You make it work for your family. And this is about making it work for families and tackling the inequalities in the workplace, which is why we have a gender pay gap in this country, because it's not a gender pay gap, it's a motherhood pay gap. But there's also a fatherhood premium, which I would argue in this debate we're showing isn't a premium at all. Because asking dads to work harder and longer and be away from their children isn't what modern dads want. That's why so many fathers look at flexibility in the workplace when they take on jobs. That's why this debate matters. Because actually, if we want to support every family, it can't just be the wealthiest who have the ability to set the terms of when they get to see their kids and make those pancakes. So I urge the Minister, many of us will be bringing forward an amendment about PAPA, about protected and paid leave for dads in their own right, because it will help every member of the family. I said it in the chamber, I'll say it again. It's good for us because our economic competitors are doing this and we've got some of the worst rates of paternity leave, but it's also good so we don't have another generation of dads who get to having teenagers and they have no relationship with them because they haven't been there, not just to make pancakes, but to be the best dad they want to be.
Gregor Poynton.
your chairmanship. It's also a pleasure to speak in this debate today as a father of 2 small boys. In fact, I was lucky enough with both of my children to have paid paternity leave, but frankly that's because I was in a white-collar job that allowed that. And for my second child, I wouldn't have qualified for the paid paternity policy, but the goodwill of my employer allowed me to have that time with my family, which was so important. But it shouldn't be about the goodwill of employers, because in this country, we've only got 52 weeks maternity leave and 2 paid weeks of paternity leave. It's the most gendered in the whole world. The country's statutory paid per offer is the least generous in Europe. Eligible UK fathers can take a maximum of 2 weeks paternity leave, paid at a rate of £184 a week. Just simply is not enough for families to live on. So that's when we see only 20% of eligible fathers, that's why we see that often fathers aren't even eligible for reasons of they're not deemed employees, they're self-employed, or they've not worked long enough for their current employer. Now, shared parental leave is a welcome innovation. However, too few families can feel that they can take it. I think it's 1% of mothers and 5% of fathers can take that. So there's huge barriers there of eligibility, affordability, and also the need for mothers to surrender their time at home in order for fathers to take it. So the TUC had did a 2023 study which looked into this, and they found that 35% of fathers in a household income of under 25,000 didn't take it. So you can see the huge class element of this issue too. Fathers on lower salaries are not able to take that time. You know, and 53% of families who do end up taking it then struggle financially for it. And the self-employed as well, you can see that fathers cannot take the time, with about 70% not taking it. So I'm so pleased to see the Employment Rights Bill now in place that's given fathers that day one rights at work, so we can get stronger support for our working families right from Livingston constituency and right across the whole country.
Before I call Daniel Francis, I'm afraid we're going to have to restrict it to 1 minute because we have a lot of speakers and we are running out of time. Just to remind colleagues that if you intervene on somebody, you actually are giving them an extra minute, so eating into the time. If you need to, want to, and they accept it, so be it, but just be aware of that. Daniel Francis, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thanks to my honourable friend from Telford for bringing this forward. I'll very quickly speak from a personal perspective. 11 years ago, our twins were born 9 weeks early, but I'd been with my then employer for 5 months. I was therefore, in the 6 weeks they were in hospital, I was given 3.5 days leave. One of those was on the day after my wife had a seizure, and I'd had to spend the whole night with her in the hospital. And in fact, when my wife was told at 12 days old that one of our children had cerebral palsy, I was at work because the doctors had to tell her during working hours. So that shows you that kind of complexity. And when my children did come home at 6 weeks, my 2 weeks paternity leave was actually my holiday because I was not entitled to a penny. I welcome what the government's bringing forward in terms of leave, but we've got to look at that pay aspect and try and get some of that right, because we cannot repeat some of those mistakes that too many fathers like myself have gone through in the past.
Peter Lamb. Okay, we're going to go to... sorry? Yes, you did, yes.
So thank you very much. Yeah. And I'd congratulate my friend on bringing forward this debate. I similarly have a personal experience of this, which was appalling. I was forced to downsize due to my employer was downsizing, so I was forced to change jobs during the course of my wife's pregnancy. And despite being open with my employer about that, I was completely ineligible for any leave statutorily. Now, they were a good employer. They actually happened to campaign on this specific issue. But the reality is that for an overwhelming majority of people, they do not have that opportunity. You know, the reality is that most people in this day and age do not stay with employers for an indefinite period of time, either through their choice or through the employers. They cannot be cut out of the system, particularly when 92% of the cost of paternity pay is being paid out of their taxes by central government in the first place. No father is going to be operating at peak levels of efficiency under these circumstances, and frankly we have an appalling birth rate in this country that is dropping, and this is one of the reasons why that is happening.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. I was on the your chairmanship, and I congratulate the member for Telford for securing this debate. In a minute, I'll try and explain my experience. A year ago this week, I spent my 2 weeks on paternity leave, and quite frankly, there's an awful lot we need to do. I welcome the changes in the Employment Rights Bill, but it cannot be right that a father is going back to work 2 weeks after a birth if, for example, a mother who's had a caesarean section is still in recovery from that medical procedure and really does need the support at home. It's not a case of being able to get up and do whatever you like at
that point, and we should change that as quickly as we can. Shared parental leave, the fact that my wife lost a month of her maternity leave so that I could have a month with my baby boy, again, it puts it stops parents wanting to take it. It made me think twice about taking it rather than thinking what an amazing privilege it is to spend a month with my baby boy. And finally, we've got to make sure that all fathers can afford to take paternity leave. It's a financial penalty to many, and we really need to encourage all parents to be able to take time with their children.
John Pearce.
You don't need to do it, it's okay. Marvellous. Thank you, Mr Pritchard, and thank you to the Honourable Member for Telford for bringing forward this debate. I have a declaration of interest. Next Tuesday, I will become a father for the third time. And will I be taking 2 weeks of paternity leave? No, I'm going to take 3. I still don't think that's enough. My wife is going to have a caesarean, as has been mentioned, and the advice to her is very clear that she should not drive for 6 weeks. We live in a rural village where if you don't drive, you don't take the other children to school. So it's absolutely vital that families have the ability to take longer in when, you know, the health of the woman and the well-being of the children is at stake.
Jonathan Davis. Jonathan Davis.
Maternity leave by the last Labour government in 2003 was one of those bold progressive changes opposed by some at the time, like the minimum wage, that years down the line had become a much valued right. Opponents at that time said it would harm business, but actually it supports new dads manage change and support their child, meaning employers benefit from staff who are ultimately more engaged with their jobs and able to do their work. While we must not be complacent, and I note the comments made by one of the Tory leadership contenders who said that maternity pay has gone too far, I do hope paternity leave remains a right which is never taken away. That's why I'm pleased the new government's Employment Rights Bill ensures all new fathers can take paternity leave. An extra 30,000 fathers or partners will benefit from this across the country with rights from day one. It's not just good for new mums and dads and the children they support, it's essential to helping those children have the best start in life. Becoming a parent, especially for the first time, is a daunting prospect, with many new parents reporting poor mental health or even postnatal depression in the period shortly after. This is not just bad for the adults concerned, it impacts their children. Depression or anxiety is often exacerbated by...
Honourable gentleman, forgive me. Serena Brackenridge.
Thank you, Chair. This new government's Employment Rights Bill will help to overhaul workers' rights, including 30,000 new fathers to qualify for paternity leave. This will be much welcomed by many families, as statistics show that as many as 2/3 of new fathers and partners who qualified for statutory paternity leave did not take it last year, an issue that impacts particularly lower income families or households where the father is the primary earner. Currently, statutory paternity leave in the UK allows only 2 weeks off, often at very low pay, significantly less than the national minimum wage. This is why the upcoming Employment Rights Bill is so vital. It offers greater flexibility for fathers in how and when they will take their leave. This reflects a broader societal shift, and we must support this.
Thank you. Whoever has their phone on, could they put it silent, please? Josh Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Time and again, my constituents in Makerfield have told me that having a child is too expensive and too exhausting in this country. Mums have told me they've been forced out of their job while on maternity leave. Dads, that employers have made it impossible for them to spend time with their kids and support their partners. As others have said, only when dads take parental leave will we make maternity discrimination a thing of the past. But there's also a deeper cultural shift that we need. The Tory party, as ever, is lagging behind our society, as we've seen this week. Because thankfully we no longer live in a world where women make the home and men make the money. Men want to be parents, dads, to cook and do the washing, to hug their kids when they've had a tough day at school, to tear up when they watch a Disney movie or laugh with the kids at my best-known constituent, Hacker the dog. In an age when so many young men suffer from mental health problems, feeling they lack purpose in our society, we must talk about what it means to be a man in a way that's in step with the age. Yes.
About the impact it has on the mental health of the mother.
I would absolutely agree with that, and the support that men can give to their partners is an absolutely vital part of the argument for paternity leave. And that's why we need to talk about what it means to be a man in the society that we live in, that's in step with the age that we live in. Strength and resilience are qualities my wife has just as much as me. Care and love are qualities that I have just as much as her. Being a dad is about care, protection and love, as well as about strength and courage. And as men, we must take pride in both. I very much hope the government's review of parental leave will include paternity as well as maternity leave, and that it will cover pay and duration of leave for employees of firms of all sizes. Every week, working parents I represent open the door exhausted and broke, despite loving their kids with all their heart. Better paternity leave is vital to show that we value parenting and we value kids and family in this country. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sorry, I think 2 or 3 speakers. We can't get you in, I'm afraid, because of the timetable. Now, the opposition spokespeople, Munira Wilson, 5 minutes. 5 minutes to the Shadow Minister, and 8 or 9, I'm afraid, for the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Telford for securing this incredibly important debate, important to parents, to children, to our whole society, as well as actually to our economy. And can I just say, it's so wonderful to see so many men here, and particularly fathers, who have been sharing so personally and so passionately. And it's really important that men really are at the forefront of this debate alongside women for the cultural change we've all heard about that needs to take place. Now, parental leave and paternity leave in particular is a subject that rarely receives the attention it deserves. As a parent of 2 primary-aged children myself, in a family where my husband has been the primary carer ever since I returned to work full-time following maternity leave, I'm personally passionate about ensuring that every family can have genuine choice in their caring arrangements in the early months and years. And when we talk about the early years, the debate often focuses on childcare because of how difficult it is for families to access affordable and flexible childcare. But that's only part of the picture. Liberal Democrats believe that parents should also have greater flexibility and choice over how to juggle work with parenting in those early few months. Now, it's important to be clear that, as the Honourable Member for Hitchin said, mothers unarguably have a unique and vital role, and that must never be undervalued. And no matter what certain honourable and right honourable members may think, and not those here today, I'm sure, maternity pay is far from excessive, it is too low, and it needs to be increased. But that's a debate for another day, because we're talking about paid paternity leave, and that gives... And paternity leave, as we've heard today, gives dads a bit more time to form that crucial bond with their children. And we know it's beneficial for boys and for girls when they have strong bonds with their dads. Greater equality in parenting, as we've heard, will also lead to greater equality in the workplace. At the moment, the imbalance in parenting is a major driver of the gender pay gap, as we've heard. On average, a woman's earnings take roughly a 40% hit when she has her first child and do not recover. A man's earnings, by contrast, barely take a hit. And that was why I'm very, very proud that it was Liberal Democrats in government that introduced shared parental leave in 2015. This was a major step forward, giving parents choice over how to share up to 50 weeks of leave and 37 weeks of pay between them. But it was just a first step, and as we've heard today, there is much, much more to do. And we've heard that take-up of shared parental leave and paternity leave remains far too low, and we know that affordability is a key reason for this. A poll last year found that 62% of fathers would take more leave if statutory paternity pay was increased. We need a major overhaul to give parents a genuine choice. Firstly, the rates need to rise. At less than half of full-time pay at the minimum wage, today's statutory rates simply aren't enough to give parents a real choice. Liberal Democrats proposed in our recent manifesto that paternity pay should be boosted to 90% of pay, with a cap for high earnings. We also called for statutory parental pay to be doubled. Second, eligibility. Unlike maternity leave, paternity leave is not a day-one right, and I am glad that the Employment Rights Bill will address that. But as we heard from my honourable friend, member for Sutton and Cheam, that's not the only barrier. We need to extend rights to self-employed parents too. Third, 2 weeks just simply is not enough, as many have laid out so eloquently. It is well below the average of 12 weeks across advanced economies, and evidence from places like Quebec shows how important a longer period of leave reserved for is boosting take-up of parental leave by men. And that's why Liberal Democrats have also proposed 1 month of paid parental leave should be a use it or lose it month for fathers and partners. Now, the previous Conservative government made grand promises on this issue. In their 2019 manifesto, they pledged to make it easier for fathers to take paternity leave. In the end, all that amounted to, as my honourable friend from Henley said, was allowing fathers to take their 2 weeks in 2 separate 1-week blocks instead of having to take it all at once. A welcome change, I'm sure, but hardly the overhaul that our system needs. So I very much hope that the new government will be much bolder and take up the plans that we Liberal Democrats have set out in our manifesto to create a system that gives all families a real choice over how they want to care for their children in those precious months.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Telford for securing this debate. I also congratulate and thank the numerous contributions that we've had today. Normally I would run through them all, Mr Chairman. I have written them down, but there are 17 and I'm conscious of time, so I will move forward. I welcome the fact that so many members have come to talk on this important subject. And on the opposition benches, we want to ensure that employees do not have to choose between a rewarding career and a fulfilling life. Due to reforms that were introduced by the previous government, Britain now has a vastly improved paternity leave package. In July 2019, the previous government consulted on whether the existing arrangements for parental leave and pay were adequate, and if more could be done to better balance the gender division of parental leave and pay between parents. The consultation sought views on the costs and benefits of reforming parental entitlements and any trade-offs that might need to accompany such reform. The government response, which was published in June 2023, set out detailed reforms to the paternity leave and pay, fulfilling a previous manifesto commitment to make it easier for fathers and partners to take paternity leave. The reforms included giving employed fathers and partners more choice and flexibility around how and when they take their paternity leave, as we've just heard, allowing them to take 2 separate blocks of 1 week of leave. Giving employed fathers and partners the abilities to take their leave at any time in the first year after the child's due date or birth, rather than just in the first 8 weeks after birth or placement for adoption. And changing the requirements for paternity leave to make them more proportionate to the amount of time the father or parent plans to take off work, cutting the amount of notice of dates from 15 weeks before the expected week of childbirth to 28 days before the leave will be taken. Moreover, the previous government supported the passage of the Shared Parental Leave and Pay Bereavement Act, the private member's bill introduced by the Honourable Member for Bridgend, who was at that time the Honourable Member for Ogmore, to remove the qualifying employment condition for shared parental leave when the birth mother or adopting parent had died. I pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Bridgend for steering that act through, which provided an important extension of support and protection for parents facing one of the most challenging situations in their lives. Conscious of time, I'm going to wind up, Mr Chairman. In closing, His Majesty's Opposition has taken note of the measures proposed in the Employment Rights Bill concerning paternity leave and pay, and the Conservative Party has always been the party of business, but we've also been pro-business and pro-worker, and getting the balance is right, is vital. We will therefore closely review the bill's provisions as it progresses through the House and will assess them on their individual merits.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair this afternoon. Can I first of all congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Telford, for securing today's debate. It has been a very well-attended debate. I think this wasn't going to be the sort of debate that we would see such unanimity, but there's clearly a fresh view in the House. We wouldn't have had this sort of turnout or this kind of debate, I think, in previous parliaments, but it's very clear that there is a mood amongst newly elected members in particular, but of course some older faith, more experienced members for change. So I would just want to reference all the contributions. Clearly we're not going to have time for that, but I'm grateful for the honourable member for Strangford as always, member for Walthamstow, Livingston, Bexley, Heath and Crayford, Crawley, Makerfield, East Renfrewshire, Didcot and Wantage, Hitchin, Lewes, Congleton, Wolverhampton North East, Gloucester, Mid Derbyshire and High Peak for their contributions. I think that shows that across the nation there is great interest and appetite for reform. Apologies if I didn't catch everyone's contributions, but I did want to make a couple of points on some of the things that were said. The Honourable Member for Henley and Tame, and I think a couple of other members talked about the fact that those working in the gig economy and those who are self-employed don't qualify for any paternity leave. Clearly, one of the things that we have set out in our next steps document on employment law reform is a review of the worker status and self-employed issues. My honourable friend, the member for Congleton, raised, as I would expect her to, the very important points about maternity discrimination, and she will know that in the Employment Rights Bill there are measures that will strengthen protections against dismissal for those on maternity leave. And I can't carry on without mentioning and congratulating in advance the Honourable Member for High Peak and his impending fatherhood for the third time. I just want to reference a couple of points that the Honourable Member for Telford made. I think he absolutely was right that this is not just about the father's role, but it's about the wider role in society and the bond between the father and child. And he did talk about his research into how government departments had been handling this. I think it's fair to say that as a newly elected government, we want to see government being an exemplar of best practice as an employer. And I think he expanded our often used phrase of being pro-worker, pro-business to our pro-family. I have absolutely no difficulty with that in this context today, because we are committed to ensuring as a government that employed parents receive the best possible support to support their work and home lives. And our plan to make work pay will ensure there is more flexibility and security for working families. Workers must be supported to work while balancing the essential ingredients of their wider family life, whether that is raising children, actually improving their own well-being, or looking after a loved one with a long-term health condition. We recognise that parental leave and pay entitlements such as paternity... I'm sorry, I'm not going to have time to take any interventions. We recognise that parental leave and pay entitlements such as paternity leave and pay play a key role in this. Being able to take time away from work when your child is born or first placed with you, because we recognise this covers other arrangements, supporting your partner and being together as a family for the first time is a very important part in a parent's and, of course, a child's life. But we know the parental system needs improvement. All members can look back to previous debates. Then it was very clear on the record that we felt as an opposition at the time that the parental leave system was in need of reform. But I will set out some of the changes that we are planning to make in relation to the Employment Rights Bill. As has been referred to, there have been some modest improvements on arrangements in the last 12 months. On the 6th of April, new changes were brought in that allow parents to take their leave and pay in 2 non-consecutive weeks, to take their leave and pay at any point in the first year after the birth or adoption of their child, and to give shorter notices for periods of leave. So that is a move forward, but of course we want to go further, and the Employment Rights Bill will make paternity leave a day one right. Currently, as we know, parents are only eligible for leave if they've been employed in their job for 26 weeks by week 15 before the baby is due. So we will be removing the requirement for a continuity of service condition for paternity leave. This will allow eligible employees to give notice of their intention to take this entitlement from day one in the job. It will make paternity leave accessible to all employees, including those who may have low job security and low continuity of service. Maybe they're not able to reach the qualifying periods as they are currently set. So we believe this will actually bring tens of thousands of more parents into scope for the entitlement. This means that many more families will benefit from this protected time off. We're also going to make other changes to paternity leave to make it more flexible for parents. What we're going to do is remove the restriction requiring paternity leave and pay to be taken before shared parental leave and pay. Currently, when shared parental leave and pay is taken, fathers lose their right to take any paternity leave and pay they have not already taken. We think that is creating unintended consequences, so we're going to remove that restriction to provide the flexibility for employers to take advantage of the different types of leave available to them at the moment to care for their child in whatever order works for them and their family. It will also remove the risk that parents will lose their entitlement to take paternity leave and pay by misunderstanding the restriction, because I think, as several honourable members have referred to, it is a complicated process, and certainly I hadn't realised there was a little cottage industry in completing forms for shared parental leave. That is clearly something that we will need to be considering in due course. We are also making other commitments to improve parental leave. We're going to make unpaid parental leave a day one right. It does give an employed parent the right to take up to 4 weeks of leave per year for their child, unless the employer agrees to more. The maximum leave per child is 18 weeks in total, and currently an employee must have worked in their job for a year to qualify for this entitlement. The Employment Rights Bill remove this continuity of service requirement, and regulations will then enable parents to give notice of their intention to take this leave on the first day in a new job. And as members will hear very clearly, we're very keen on having day one rights in a whole range of areas for employees. This, again, alongside the changes to paternity leave and pay, will increase flexibility and actually solidify and enhance economic activity for employed parents. Evidence shows that people who move jobs get wage increases. The current system of waiting up to a year for parental leave entitlements when one changes an employer means parents are put off from seeking new jobs, which could have actually boosted their family income at a time when, of course, they will need it more than ever. We also know that the whole parental leave system doesn't currently support working families, and as members have referred to, we have committed to a review of the parental leave system. Inevitably, we will not be able to do that without looking at the issues that have been raised today about how paternity leave and pay works. It's clearly part of a larger interconnected web. This review is going to be undertaken separately to the Employment Rights Bill, but work is already underway about planning for delivery on that. So, in conclusion, Mr Pritchard, I want to give my honourable friend an opportunity to respond, but we are listening very carefully to the many representations that we have heard. Our plan to make work pay is a core part of the mission of our government to grow the economy, raise living standards across the country and create opportunities for all. It will help more people stay in work. It will improve job security and boost living standards. The whole approach that we're taking will benefit families across the board. It will benefit workers and businesses beyond the important specific interventions that we've talked about today. But we've got a very, very important package that I'm proud to be part of delivering in this new government.
Vaughan Davies to wind up.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's been a fascinating debate, as the Minister says. I think most parts of the United Kingdom covered, and also a cross-party progressive alliance, I could say, about this issue going forward. I do hope that the Minister, as he has noted, there is a significant amount of support for this. There is, of course, an appetite from people like myself and the Honourable Member for Makerfield to really use the Employment Rights Bill as the vehicle for this progressive change. But if not, then engaging with that review would be most helpful. I also think, just finally, Mr Pritchard, that the statutory minimum is the statutory minimum, and the government and the public sector should really see this as an opportunity to show the lead to the country about what fathers should expect in the workplace. I do hope that colleagues from the Cabinet Office will take note of that point. I will.
Thank you, my friend, for giving way very briefly. Does he agree that as part of that review we should also be looking at, as a former small business owner, we should be promoting to small businesses the benefits, in fact, of making sure you have adequate family leave and flexible working at the same time to help grow the economy?
I absolutely do agree with my honourable friend's point around small businesses, and it's interesting that since securing this debate, a number of employers have come forward to talk about the steps that they are taking and the appetite from them actually to take further steps because they see it as an opportunity to address recruitment and retention issues too. But Mr Pritchard, I look forward to working with the Minister. I thank him for his contribution. I know that there'll be further such conversations over the course of this Parliament.
Can I take this opportunity to thank all Right Honourable and Honourable members for being very helpful. It was very difficult for members to speak for just a minute, and pretty much everybody did. So can I congratulate you and congratulate the Honourable gentleman who sadly I wasn't able to call, who seized the opportunity in the last minute with the mover of the motion, and congratulate my Honourable friend, my neighbour, for his first Westminster Hall debate, which I'm sure will be the first of many over the coming years. So can I thank you all, and I will now put the question that this House has considered paternity leave and pay. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The sitting stands adjourned. Have a great evening. Thank you.